Hey, SetupMyGuitar. This is Omari's Fender Jazz Bass. It's a beautiful instrument, good looking guitar. It has through body strings, 34-inch scale length, active pickups. Serial number tells me it was made in 2013. Beautiful instrument. It came in with a really high action. He wanted me to lower the action, but keep it where he could slap the strings and not get into a fret buzz situation. So I've already done 2 turns of the truss rod. Down here you have to take the pickup guard off to get access to really get in there. Tighten the truss rod 2/3 of a turn going clockwise to tighten it. And that's brought me into the point where I get a 14/1000 gap between the 8th fret and a straight edge. So I've taken a lot of the dish out of the neck. It was like this. It's just got a little bit of dish to it now. Getting a little buzz up here. This isn't a conclusive diagnosis, but it looks like I may need to raise the nut, and we'll see. It looks like it has a compound radius neck, maybe like 9.5 inches up at the nut and 12 inches at the bridge. I'll double check that. So I always say setups are easy. First you set the relief on the neck, and then you set the action, and then you set the intonation. Well, we need to do a little bit of fret dressing on this neck here to get it in good shape, and as part of that we want to be sure that we understand the neck radius. I thought maybe it was 9.5 up here by the nut, and that seems to be confirmed. And then I had thought it down here it was set up, it looked like around 12 inches at the bridge, but let's see what we've got here. Down by the 20, what is this? 15, 17, 19, 21, the 21st fret. It looks like 10 inches, but it could also be 9.5. It actually looks like 9.5. So it looks like this is a dead straight 9.5 inch radius neck down to the 21st fret. In which case I would say that the bridge should be set up for 9.5 inch radius. It was set up for around 12. Double check these measurements before I go too far. Often what I'll do is I'll take the radius block, here's a 9.5 here, a little bit of sandpaper, and I'll mask off the neck, the fingerboard, and I'll mark up the frets with Sharpie, and I'll just lightly start touching these frets and see if this 9.5 inch radius is in fact what cleans up the frets evenly. If they're not cleaning up evenly, then we gotta adjust that dimension. It might be more of a 10 inch radius or something. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll dress the frets up nice, and then we'll be able to string it back up. I can use the old strings for that, and then we'll check the nut slot depth. Okay, so the fingerboard of this Fender Jazz Bass is protected with painter's tape. We've got it covering the fingerboard, and we'll Sharpie up the frets, and we'll see if that 9.5 inch neck radius is correct. Okay, so we've got the frets, pretty good coating of Sharpie on the tops of the frets. And then before we start doing any sanding, we want to make sure that the neck is true again, because we've removed the tension. And the strings are slack. And with a lot of guitars, if you have the truss rod adjustment set for good relief and then you remove the strings, you'll find the neck is actually pretty straight. But let's check real quick here. And I can tell you right now, this is rocking. So we don't want to address the frets in that condition. There's 2 ways to approach this. We can put a weight right here, and if we are lucky, we can find a weight that's convenient that we can put on here that'll straighten out the neck enough that we can dress the frets. Otherwise, we'll have to actually loosen the truss rod a little bit down here to try and straighten things up. And sometimes you can get, if you work very carefully, you can just apply pressure with one hand while you work the frets with the other. But that leaves you open for a little bit of error. So let's see what we can do. So I was able to get the neck true in this condition. loosening the truss rod a little bit. Fortunately, I was able to find my ball driver tip. It's 3/16 ball driver. Seems to work well in here. I loosened the truss rod by 1/6 of a turn. That's, with these hex drivers, that's the easiest way to measure your turns, right? 1/6 and then another 1/6, so 2/6 turns, 1/3 of a turn of the truss rod loosening. Got me to where I'm dead straight. And with a light touch, I'll go in and start touching these frets. And I can tell you already, I'm cleaning up over the central portion on these frets here. Now there may be more wear in other spots, so you have to sort of see how it goes. Almost completely cleaned up along these frets, so it's just a light touch. I'm not really removing any material to speak of to get a sense of the radius. It's virtually all cleaned up here, and I'll keep going along like this and make sure that I've got the right radius. I can try the 10-inch block and see if I get the wings a little bit better. But this first fret, which had very little wear to begin with, it's about 2/3 of the way Sharpie removed, so that's pretty close. It's looking pretty good. I'll double check, as I said, but right now it looks like the 9.5-inch radius block is going to work for this, and it's just a little dusting I'm taking off anyway, just enough to chew this up, and then we'll profile. All right, let me run you through a couple more pointers here. My light, I keep moving back and forth. I should get 2 of them and turn the one on that I want, but I need this over the frets so I can see what's going on with the fret job. Let's see. So I said I was just going to dust these a little bit, take off the bare minimum because it was base. So a couple things, you know, as I just touch them a little bit and realize, okay, I may have to spend a little time doing this. Really important to get back here, protect these pickups. You want to not have any iron filings, get onto the pole pieces. They'll stay there kind of forever. So at least a bare minimum, some tape over them. And sometimes if I'm having to do some serious rework on a neck, I'll make a tent of newspaper or whatever. It kind of gets to be a little tricky because you end up having to cover it so much to protect it, but it gets in the way. You know, if I had a big buildup here, I wouldn't be able to come back here and measure, you know, projections back to the bridge or whatever. So that's where it gets tricky, though. In this case, I'm just going to cover up the body a little bit more so that I don't get too much in the way of shavings on there. And so probably next time you see this, it'll be more covered up here, just plain paper taped on. And before I go any further, I want to show you something though. So I'm going to grab the camera and pull it over. High production values here. So this is what's causing me some concern. So this is almost a brand new neck. And I have a 9.5-inch radius that matches the nut, and I've measured up 9.5 inches down here. And it's not necessarily easy for you to see what's happening with the Sharpie marks on these frets, but I'll give you the upshot. So here on this fret, the Sharpie is almost all gone. There's a little vestige still here, and I see this sometimes. You have to be sure you're holding the block in such a way that you should be catching that. But this is what bothers me is. What I'm seeing here is this is from the factory without any real setup to begin with. So, you know, I hear people talk about how great some of these necks are when they come out of the box. I think that's a bunch of BS, personally. Once the frets are banged or pressed into the fingerboard, hopefully they're bonded in with either tight bond or crazy glue. This is why they need to be dressed. So, I mean, this guitar really, it should have been set up properly before it was ever shipped out to a customer. It's a fine bass. You know, this is a nice bass, but this is the difference. This isn't going to be like this when I'm done with it. Where I actually had removed a little bit of material, it's sort of flattened here, in here. and here, but there's still Sharpie showing here, and in some cases then I've removed material a little bit over here as well. When you see that, it tells you that these weren't true to form, and that what I'm doing now is what really should have been done to begin with. But it'll be great after I'm done with it. And so that's what you get when you get a proper setup. Alrighty then, the newest update. Most of the Sharpie is gone from the frets. I stuck with a 9.5 inch radius block, and all the first, second, third, fourth frets, all the ones up in here, in pretty good shape. Notice I react the abrasive force a little bit with my hand underneath the neck, keep it from distorting. These are all trued up to radius, and down here there's a little bit of Sharpie left. These frets were certainly never worn. As I mentioned earlier, never really set up, never really dressed. Just a touch of Sharpie left here. Yeah, it's cleaned up pretty good. So next step is to profile the frets so they're nice and round going this way. And let me give you a quick shot what it looks like in there. Let's see if it'll focus at all. I doubt it. That's not going to focus right, but anyway, there's really no Sharpie left, and that's a mark on the masking tape. That's one of the reasons we put the masking tape down. We don't want to get Sharpie in the fretboard. So it's looking good. Okay, we got the frets dressed in a nice radius, 9.5 inch from stem to stern. Couple of fret files now that I'm using to crown the frets. If I was using it the way I usually do, I'd be blocking your view. But the idea is this has a nice radius profile in it, and we're just crowning the fret by gently but firmly pulling it across there. I've Sharpied up the tops of the frets again, so as I go I can see where I'm removing material. And you want to make sure that you're removing the material from here, and then as you move across you're getting it all the way over. And that puts a nice round top on there. They were sort of flattened out from the sanding block. And then after this we'll go over with sanding stick, and this is going to be close to the final profile, and then we'll touch up with some 4/0 steel wool, get them nice and shiny, and we'll have frets that are in the right lay, and they'll be a pleasure to play on. They'll be nice and smooth and shiny, and this bass guitar is going to be styling. Well, one of the things you see as you get close to being done on your fret crowning, with my illumination I have an orange shroud on this light, and I get a bright spot here, right where the light's reflecting off the fret. And then surrounding that is a little bit of the orange and some brown maybe. And when you chase it along, you see it's not Sharpie that's left behind, but it's actually either diffraction or some kind of colors from the light reflecting off the frets, or it's just, like I say, the orange from that lampshade. And you might get different results if you're doing your own fret work. Probably depends on the lighting conditions. Just a little tip of the trade. Okay, I think these frets look great. Next step is I'm going to go through with the fret rocker. Okay, so the way this works is we grab the fret rocker, we go along until we find a place where we actually get something rocking, which hasn't happened yet. A little bit there, and then we mark the high spot in the middle fret. And then we'll polish that down with the sanding stick. Okay, I ran through the neck with the fret rocker. I only came up with 6 spots that need to be polished down. I've got one here, just on that far side, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This entire next to the last fret. I don't know what it is. The next to the last fret always seems to need work, but there you go. Alright, I've finished with the fret rocker. I've got these things polished down to where there's no rocking of the fret rocker, and I'm using the steel wool. As I was going along, I figured I'd try and share this with you. I don't know if it comes through too well on camera, but you can really tell the difference when you've hit it with the steel wool. You get this guy here has this brown sort of cast to it, and then the halo where the light's hitting it. And then the fret adjacent to it has a different look to it. I don't know if you can see that very well. But here goes, I rub it with the 4/0 steel wool, and you can already tell the difference. It's just much more reflective. So I'll keep going along like this. These frets are in beautiful shape now. And I don't even have to mark anything to know where I left off, because I can tell the difference is obvious. Want to vacuum up all the steel wool bits before I take off the protection here. It's going to be loud. Okay, so the guitar, the bass came in with really high action. It was 160 thousandths here. I've got it down to where it's about 90 thousandths at the 17th fret here. 78 thousandths on the treble side. Neck straight, frets are dressed, crowned, beautiful, all leveled. A little bit of buzzing up here on the first fret when I slapped the string. So I built up the nut slot depth on the E and the A string, the 3rd and the 4th string. A little bit with some composite material that'll last forever. So I filed back down a little bit, trying to see where I am. I've made some measurements. Under here I've got 32 thousandths of a gap, and under the 3rd string, what do I have? 46 thousandths is what I have. So I got to bring those down a little bit and do that with a file, which is lurking around here somewhere. And in order to do it, I have to take this tuning machine off, so I'll do that, very easy, and pull the strings aside, in this case, do a little filing, and she'll be gorgeous. 19mm wrench, loosen this nut, spin that nut, tuning machine drops out, put it someplace safe. So this is one of those things that makes this not quite a money-making operation. It's very tedious, a lot of back and forth to get the nut slot depth right. So I only did a little filing. I have a gauge set up to try and help know when I'm getting where I need to be, but it never seems to work out. You have to be just careful you don't remove too much material, go back in and check. So at least that's the way I do it, cut and try. And that's how you get the good results. If you don't have the patience, there's no point in doing it in the first place. Okay, so this is tuned up to pitch. Let's see what we have here. Feel gauges. So I had, what was it again? I had 46 thousandths clearance here. Let's see if that fits in it. Yeah, that's 42. And that pushes the string up a bit more than you would expect if it was the right fit. This is supposed to be 38, so this is probably going to slip in there. So we're probably around 40 thousandths. Well, I don't feel any play. So 38 might be just about where we are. Good thing I didn't go any further on that one. So if I'm at 38 and I want to get to around 20, I got to take down another 18 thousandths. So that gives me an idea the pace I'm going, how many strokes with the file to take, and we'll check it back again. Ready up. Right, well here's the magic of filing the nut slot. Just a lot of back and forth stroking with the file here. I've got a mark on this because it's actually a tapered file that I'm using. It's like a jeweler's version of a rat tail, and it tells me how far to go to get the right diameter. And I think I'm making good progress. I've got a lot of debris that's come out there now, so I'll probably want to recheck that pretty quick. I want to make sure I don't go too low. I was using this is 70 thousandths. The fret's about 50 thousandths of an inch above the fretboard, the fingerboard, and I want to be about 20 thousandths right here. So I was going based on 70 thousandths. This measures around 70 thousandths, and I put pencil marks, and I was starting to dig into it a little bit, but I've already got that measurement. So you can see it's not totally true. So it's kind of hinky, and I'm rubbing on it a little bit without really being down that far. If it was a really good gauge, like if I wanted to really use my feeler gauges, I could just go by it and get a lot closer, I imagine. That's probably pretty close. Now this one, different diameter using a different part of the file. I've got the mark for that too. And we'll have to remeasure this guy as I go. Let me give you an idea what that looks like. Oh, hold on. It's not going to be in focus. We've tried this before. It'll never be in focus, but you get the idea. And then I hit it with this. Careful, it's going to get loud. Okay. Yeah, it's never in focus. There's the idea. Alright, this may give you a little bit better look at it. And I'll take a still photo and throw that up on the site. So, there you go. Well, so there are a lot of ways to get these measurements more precise. Using the feeler gauge 32 thousandths under here. This is a dial indicator, and at rest it's reading 6 thousandths of an inch. So if I get this on here now, I say, okay, when I push down a little bit on the string, being careful not to push it off to the side, I'm getting about, you probably can't see it, but about 5 thousandths of deflection. So I would say that I'm about 37 thousandths gap there, somewhere along there. And I can check, there are a number of ways to check that. One way, if I can throw together two things that are about 37, 35, that should be 38. If I put this under here and it just barely causes this to rise, I'd have some confidence that that's right. And if I tweedle it, hit about 10, drops down to 6. So I think actually this is about somewhere like 4 to 6 more than the actual gap. So instead of 38, it's probably around 34. It's right around in there. And I said I was shooting for 20, but I think 25 might actually be a better choice. We'll check that we don't lose intonation. Sound good? Well, it's good I double check my measurements with the dial indicator. So I get, for the gap between the first fret and the string, open string, I get 38 thousandths of an inch, 30 thousandths of an inch, 32 thousandths of an inch, and 37 thousandths of an inch. And those numbers might be just a touch higher than I was originally shooting for, but I checked the intonation quickly. This is the old string, so I'm not doing the final setup, but making sure that the intonation is correct. Fretting at the 12th fret, getting an octave of the open string. And when I fret here, the tuner tells me I'm getting a G. very close to being exactly right on. And proceeding along the strings, went to the regular chromatic tune setting on here, fretting at the first fret. Everything checks out the correct pitch for each of the fretting locations. So what that means is I'm not so high that I'm bending the string too much and shortening the string in the process of fretting it here. So the height looks good. Hey, here's a quick look at how I can make the precise measurements between a fret and a string. I've got a feeler gauge combination here that measures 35 thousandths of an inch. If I put this dial indicator is sitting almost zeroed out on the string, it's reading about +2 thousandths of an inch. I put this under here, and at the minimum, when I flip it just right, it comes to about +2 again. Returns to +2 when I push down from the top with this feeler gauge set. I get about +2. So that means this thickness precisely compensates for the amount of string motion going down, hitting the fret. And it tells me in this case I've got 35 thousandths of an inch gap under the 4th string down to the 1st fret. And that tells me about the nut slot. Setups are easy. What does it mean when I say that? It means I'm messing with you. So we've done all this great work, and I double-checked the relief in the neck. Now, wouldn't you know, it isn't back exactly where I wanted it, so I have to readjust it. And I found I actually have a cutoff Allen wrench, 3/16, that engages the truss rod really nicely. I'm going to give it a little bit more, tighten it up a little bit more, because I have too much relief. I have to tighten the truss rod to bend the neck this way a little bit. And we can recheck. 8th fret, 15 thousandths goes a little too easily. A little bit more. We're doing fine adjustments here, so if you have to make a big adjustment, you need to let it set for a while and sink in. We'll have to recheck the pitch so I'm not adjusting the neck at the wrong pitch. But okay, now that is much closer to what I want. There we go. Always double check your measurements. You go through a process, you change 3 or 4 things, go back and check the first one again. Okay, I just adjusted relief. I've got it where I want it. So what should I do now? I should go back and check action, because adjusting the relief is going to affect the action. So I need to come back in here, reestablish the action the way I want it, 17th fret, get it around 94 thousandths. On the 4th string and the 1st string I want around 78 thousandths. Double check the radius, although that shouldn't have changed. If these all mute, they're all hitting the radius gauge. So the radius still checks pretty good. I'll put together the right feeler gauge setup to check these dimensions, and I'll let you know how it went. Okay, here's where we stand. I've got the relief back to 14 thousandths at the 8th fret, measured with a straight edge. I've got the action set to 100 thousandths on the 4th string, goes across to 97, 90, 79. This came in with an action of 160 thousandths at the 12th fret. I got to measure the 12th fret action. It's going to be, you know, substantially lower than the 160. It's going to be about half of what it was. No fret buzz. When I really slap the strings, I can hear them hit around the 12th fret, which is normal. That's the maximum amplitude of vibration. But I don't hear fret buzz per se. We can always jack these saddles up a little bit if the owner wants. I'd say we're looking good. This is the way the fingerboard looks with a little fresh boiled linseed oil. Strung up, the bass is ready, give it a little test drive. That's sweet, man. What do you think of it?
Love it. Oh man, this is great. It feels so good.
That's awesome. I want you to be happy, man.
Oh man.